The Arrowverse has had 20 seasons, and each one of these seasons has a main villain. In this video, I will be ranking all 20 of these main villains from my least favorite to my favorite. I will be adding a huge twist here, because last time I did this, I added a little thing where I added these categories and gave each one of those categories points. It didn't necessarily add up to something, but I really wanted to expand on that in this video. In this video, it will actually add up to points, and I will also add a lot more categories. Those categories being the rivalry between the main hero and the main villain, which I think is the most important thing. That could add up to 15 points. The development of the main villain, which could add up to 12 points. The acting of any actor or even voice actor who played the role in the season, that could add up to 10 points. The threat level of the main villain compared to the hero, that could add up to 8 points. And if the main villain is too powerful for the hero, then they would get 0 points. The motivation of the main villain, which could get up to 8 points. The design of the main villain, which could get up to 4 points, as well as the dialogue in the entire season, which would also go up to 4 points. The screen time of the main villain, if they don't appear enough, then they maybe have less points, that could add up to 2 points. And finally, the bonus point, which is if there is a cool reveal in the season regarding the main villain, then they just get an extra bonus point in that regard. With that in mind, let's start the video with number 20.
Now, if you would excuse me, I better be getting back to 2166. I've been waiting so very long to meet your family. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
So, I don't think I put Vandal Savage at the bottom of my list in the previous versions of this video, but looking at the points, looking at all these categories, he had the least points with 3 in rivalry, 4 in development, 1 in acting, 1 in threat level, 3 in motivation, 2 in design, 1 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the cool reveal bonus point. He ends up having 20 points, putting him at the bottom of the list, and honestly, looking at it now, I definitely see why that would happen. I really don't like Vandal Savage. He's probably the most disappointing character in the entire Arrowverse, considering he's one of my favorite DC villains in other TV shows and movies I've seen him in. So the fact that he's at the bottom of the list really sucks, but he wasn't a good villain at all.
You have the hubris of the great house of hell, which blinds you to the truth. Humanity is a disease. Myriad is the cure.
Vandal Savage might be my least favorite villain in the Arrowverse, but Non has got to be the most forgettable, which is why 2 years ago, when the first time I did this video, I actually put Astra on the list because I genuinely forgot, or maybe I didn't even watch it, I don't remember, that Non replaced her as the main villain. Anyway, for rivalry, he gets 5 points, 4 in development, 3 in acting, 4 in threat level, 2 in motivation, 2 in design, 1 in dialogue, 1 in screen time, and 0 in the big reveal, in the bonus point reveal, giving him 22 points, which again, really bad for this list.
How will you respond?
Dakam Ur. I accept your challenge, Supergirl. We duel in 4 hours. Daxam assures you it will be your last.
Rhea could basically be tied with Non for second to last place, but I didn't really want to have any ties in this video, so I did give her 1 extra point. She gets a 5 in rivalry, 4 in development, 4 in acting, 4 in threat level, 3 in motivation, 2 in design, 1 in dialogue, 0 in screen time, and 0 in the bonus point, giving her 23 points. But honestly, I don't really like her more than Non. They're basically tied for second to last place, but just for the video, she's third to last place with Non in second place. I just really don't like these villains at all.
Papa's home. Miss me? I miss you. We'll be together soon, I bet.
Honestly thought that I like Neuron more than obviously I do on this list, but looking at all the points and looking at him as a villain, I don't think he really deserves to be any higher than 17th place. 6 in rivalry, 4 in development, 0 in acting because he doesn't have a regular actor. He has a bunch of different actors who play him, which worked for like Mullis because at least he has 1 voice actor to bring it all together. It doesn't work for Neuron. 5 in threat level, 3 in motivation, 2 in design, 2 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the bonus point, giving him 24 points. Honestly, even though he has only 1 point more than Rhea and 2 more than Nan, I do definitely like him a lot more than those guys. It's just really the acting which really crippled this guy because he got absolutely no points.
You need to hear this. Dante's been lying to you. He killed your mother. Liar.
Amigo Queen is my least favorite main villain of Arrow. Although Arrow does definitely have a lot of great main villains, they also have a lot of not great main villains at all, and the worst of them is Amigo Queen. She gets a 5 in rivalry, 4 in development, 2 in acting because the actress is not good, 3 in threat level because she is a worse fighter, and then Oliver Queen, and that she's obviously not a physical threat at all, and the Ninth Circle also not very threatening, 5 in motivation because I do like her motivation just a little bit, 3 in design because I actually do like her costume quite a lot, 0 in dialogue because her dialogue is genuinely awful, 1 in screen time because although the actress did not appear as much as she should have, the character appeared in basically, I think, almost every episode of the season. Then there is 1 in the reveal because her reveal in episode, I think it was 8, was definitely not bad, but that does not add up to a lot of points at all because it adds up to 25 points, putting her near the bottom of the list.
Oh gosh, that's fun. I really could do this all day. Open it up. They could have at least tried to hide this chemical bomb. Serves them right. It's getting stolen and used against them.
My main problem with Damien Darhk is that he's just way too powerful for the main hero, which is why he gets a pretty low rivalry score because it kind of does diminish the rivalry. I'm only giving him 6, and he gets a 0 in the threat level. There's also a 6 in development, a 7 in acting because that's probably the best part about him, and at least this season. The fact that he's played by Neil McDonough, who is a pretty compelling, pretty charismatic character. He's not exactly scary in the role, which is why I'm only giving him 7. He doesn't really have any great emotional scenes or anything, but I do think he is good enough to get the highest acting score so far in this video. He gets 4 in motivation because although it is generic, I think it does work for the most part. 1 in design because it's pretty boring, 2 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the reveal, adding up to 28 points.
You see this man? Savior of the city. It's pathetic.
I feel like you can do better.
Ricardo Diaz would be a lot higher on this list if it included the first 7 episodes of Season 7. The rivalry would be way higher, the development, the acting, basically everything would be a lot higher. Sadly though, it doesn't, and I think Ricardo Diaz is the second most disappointing main villain, at least for Season 6, in the entire Arrowverse, right behind Vandal Savage, just because of what I was expecting. Anyway, for the rivalry, he gets a 7, a 5 in development, a 4 in acting, a 5 in threat level, a 4 in motivation, 2 in design, 1 in dialogue, 0 in screen time, and a 1 in the reveal, adding up to 29 points, which is, again, really disappointing for a character that I thought would be really, really awesome.
That's good. That just leaves one more monster for me to kill.
If Cicada version 2 never took over from Cicada, then the original Cicada, Orland Dwyer, would actually be a lot lower on the list because of how bad of a villain he became. Thankfully, he was overtaken by Grace Gibbons and technically also overtaken by the Reverse Flash later. He's not counted for the Flash Season 5 for various reasons, but I do think Cicada version 2, aka Grace Gibbons, is a lot better than the original, but still, she is the worst main villain from the Flash. 4 in rivalry, 4 in development, 3 in acting, 6 in threat level, 3 in motivation, 4 in design, 3 in dialogue, 1 in screen time, and 1 in the reveal, give her 30 points, which again is a lot higher than the supposedly like 20-something points the original Cicada would get, but still not high enough to crack any higher than the top 12.
Don't be afraid, my son. Death comes for us all. We can only evade it so long.
Looking back on Ra's al Ghul, I feel like we give him a lot of flack because he didn't compare to the other main villains that came before him, which is Malcolm Merlyn, Slade Wilson, and at the time, Eobard Thawne as well. He was the first main villain in the Arrowverse that wasn't amazing or anything, which is why I think we look so down on him, but honestly, he isn't that bad. I would give him a 7 in rivalry, 6 in development, a 6 in acting, 6 in threat level, 2 in motivation, 2 in design, 2 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the big reveal, giving him a total of 33 points. Sure, he's nowhere near the best, and he doesn't even get to the top 10, but I think that looking at all the other villains on this list, the 8 villains under him, he's honestly a lot better than all of those guys.
Ground. Air. I can feel again. I can breathe again. I've beaten you, finally.
Where's Wally? What just happened to him?
Similarly to Ra's al Ghul, I feel like Savitar gets a little bit more flack than he might deserve. Yes, he was kind of boring at that point because he was the third main villain that was a speedster in a row, and he just wasn't as good as the first two. He wasn't as scary as Zoom, he wasn't as just well thought out as Reverse Flash, but honestly, the fact that he looks really cool and the fact that he is definitely a lot better than some other villains, a lot of other villains in the Arrowverse, I feel like we gave him maybe a little bit too much flack. I would give him a 7 in rivalry, 5 in development, 5 in acting, 6 in threat level, 5 in motivation, 5 in design, because his design is actually pretty awesome, 3 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and because I didn't really like his reveal, which was too predictable and came way too late in the season, I would give it a 0, so that adds up to 38 points, which is not that bad considering everything under him.
As if there were any doubt. What's our next step?
I'm thinking.
It's a huge shame that the Thinker is not anywhere near the top of the list, because I think that when he was played by Neil Sandilands, he could have been one of the greatest main villains in the Arrowverse, but considering he was not really played by Neil Sandilands for I think most of the season, the acting instead of being 10 out of 10 is only 6 out of 10, and the rivalry instead of being like 13, maybe closer to 15 out of 10 is only 8 out of 10. The development is 7 out of 10 because it is pretty good. The threat level also pretty good, to give it a 7. Motivation 5, design 3, dialogue 3, screen time 1, because although he did appear quite enough, the actor Neil Sandilands, because he wasn't there, it really feel like the character wasn't there at all. So although technically he was, I would only give it a 1, and there wasn't really any good reveal, so I'd give it a 0, which does add up to 40, which is not bad at all, but I think he could have been way closer to the maximum, which is 65, or maybe at least closer to 50, because when Neil Sandilands was playing him, I genuinely think he was a great actor and a great villain with a great rivalry with the main character.
I am so much more than a god.
Mullis is probably the best main villain in the Arrowverse, who is a 100% completely original character, an 8 in rivalry, 7 in development, 7 in acting from, although no actor, the voice actor John Noble did a great job throughout the entirety of the season, 7 in threat level, 5 in motivation, 5 in design, 2 in dialogue, 0 in screen time, because while technically he was around, he didn't really appear at all except for one episode and then one scene in another episode, which I do think worked for the season, but at the same time, I can't really give him screen time points for that. Anyway, also 1 in a good reveal, because the reveal in episode, I think it was 16, was actually pretty amazing, so he gets that bonus point, giving him 42 out of the possible 65. I do think he's a pretty good main villain in a pretty great season. Reign is basically where Supergirl started actually thinking about the main villains, because you see the first and second main villains all the way at the bottom of the list, while the third and fourth haven't gotten to them yet, or at least I haven't gotten to the fourth one yet, because Reign is right here. In terms of the rivalry with her and Kara, I would give it like an 8. It's not amazing, but it is definitely not bad. 7 in development, 8 in acting. I do think the actress is pretty great. 8 in threat level, basically a perfect threat level for the character. 5 in motivation, 4 in design, 3 in dialogue, dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the reveal, giving her a total of 45 points, which is pretty great, especially when you compare it to the first 2 villains of this show. The Legion of Doom are the best villains from Legends of Tomorrow, bringing the best villain from The Flash, one of the best villains from Arrow, and a villain from Arrow, another one which turned out to be pretty great, as well as 2 fan favorite villains from The Flash. It was a recipe for something great, and it turned out to be a great super villain team in the form of the Legion of Doom. 9 in rivalry, 8 in development, 8 in acting from all the actors. Although this is mainly Reverse Flash and Matt Letcher, it's kind of really the entirety of the team. 8 in threat level, 6 in motivation, 5 in design because of the Reverse Flash's costume mainly, 2 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 0 in the reveal, give them 48 total points, making them the best villains from Legends of Tomorrow.
At least he's a good man.
He is not a man! I was the man of tomorrow, not him! Not him!
John Cryer's Lex Luthor is, in my opinion, the greatest Lex Luthor to ever appear in live action. The only reason he's not, at the top of the list is because basically the rivalry between him and Kara was not that great, really, in the season. Although he never appeared, Superman never appeared, the rivalry was so good between Lex Luthor and Superman, but that's not being counted for this video, so only gets a 7 in rivalry. He gets a 9 in development, 10 in acting, 8 in threat level, 8 in motivation, 5 in design, 5 in dialogue, 0 in screen time because he only appeared for 3 episodes, and 1 in the great reveal, which came in episode 15. The fact that he already cured himself, that was insane, and the fact that he was behind everything was insane. So basically perfect all the way around, except for in the rivalry and in the screen time, which it's really the rivalry that really cripples him and lowers him from the top 5, but honestly, I really love this version of Lex Luthor. Oh yeah, he has a total of 54 points.
Because the people there don't want it to be saved. So you kill them all?
Yes! They deserve to die! All of them! The way she died!
Malcolm Merlyn was obviously the first main villain in the Arrowverse, and out of the 19 main villains that came after him, only 4 of them managed to get past his default top spot. He would get, in my opinion, a 12 in rivalry, 10 in development, 10 in acting, 7 in threat level, 8 in motivation, 2 in the design, 4 in dialogue, 1 in screen time, and 1 in the reveal, a total of 55 points, making him one of the best main villains in the Arrowverse.
What did you just say?
You can't lock up the darkness.
Zoom is by far the most menacing and scary main villain in the Arrowverse, which is why, in terms of his threat level, I'm actually going to bypass the system. I'm not going to give him the maximum amount, which is 8, and I'm not going to give him a 9. I'm going to give him a 10 in threat level, meaning that the maximum amount is not 8, it's actually 10, but just consider it to be 8, and Zoom is just actually better than that, because looking at the other 8s I've given, they're not really anything compared to Zoom. I'd give him a 12 in rivalry, 9 in development, 7 in acting, because I do think while he was great, the actor who played him is not as good as when he is masked. Anyway, 5 in motivation, 3 in design, 4 in dialogue, 1 in screen time, and 1 in the reveal, giving him a total of 56 points. I don't think he's really as good as Malcolm Merlyn in anything except for the fact that he's way better in how menacing he is, giving him 1 extra point, putting him in the top 4.
The supercapacitors, the containment field is fluctuating. They need to get out of there now.
The reason I know all this is because your powers are almost exactly like those of the Flash.
Oh, I'm not like the Flash at all. Some would say I'm the reverse.
Starting off the top 3, we have Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, and let me just say, I would 100% understand if any of these 3 are your favorite villains in the Arrowverse, because honestly, they're kind of interchangeable, and they're barely better than each other. They're all incredible main villains. For the Reverse Flash, I would give him a 14 in rivalry, not quite 15, just because there's only one rivalry that I would give a 15, and although Reverse Flash and Barry Allen's rivalry is definitely a 15 in terms of the entire Arrowverse, I don't think it's quite there in season 1. Anyway, 10 in development, 10 in acting, 7 in threat level, 7 in motivation, 5 in the design, 4 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 1 in the reveal, giving him a total of 60 out of the possible 65 points, making him one of the best villains in the Arrowverse, and I do think he's actually the best villain in the Arrowverse, but when you're confined to only the Flash season 1, he's not quite there, but I mean, he basically is tied for first place with the next 2, but again, almost tied.
5 years ago, I made you a promise. Do you remember? Well, I'm here to fulfill it. I'll see you around, kid.
Deathstroke, aka Slade Wilson, is just an all-around great villain. In terms of his rivalry, I would give him a 14 out of 15, 12 in development, 10 in acting because Mano Bennett is so great in the role. The threat level is a perfect 8 out of 8, really, or kind of an 8 out of 10, but anyway, motivation, I would give it a 5. It's the only thing where I really don't think he's great. His motivation is mainly he was corrupted by the Mirror Crew and now he hates Oliver, which is fine. I do think it worked for the season, but compared to the other great motivations in this video, I think a 5 is really all he deserves. Anyway, the design is practically perfect, give it a 5. Dialogue is great. For screen time, although he doesn't really appear until the mid-season finale and doesn't become the main villain until really late in the season, which is why I'm only giving him a 1. I think it also really works for the season, and also the reveal, I would give him a 1. Anyway, that means he gets 61 points, only 1 more point than Reverse Flash, but now we have the top slot, which you already know is...
Who do you think can last longer? Susan or me? I'm 10 steps ahead of you and you haven't even figured out what game we're playing yet.
Prometheus, who up until very recently was my favorite villain in the Arrowverse. Now, although he's no longer my favorite villain, he is still my favorite main villain from any one given season. I think that Josh Segarra is perfect in the role. I would give him a 10 in acting. The rivalry between him and Oliver is amazing. Best out of any given one given season for a main hero and a main villain, so I would give it a 15. 12 in development, 7 in threat level, 8 in motivation, 4 in design, 4 in dialogue, 2 in screen time, and 1 in the reveal, giving him 62 points, which again, only 1 more than Slade Wilson and only 2 more than Reverse Flash, so you can really see how interchangeable these 3 main villains are, but still, with him having 1 more point than Slade, 2 more points than Eobard, he is in first place as my favorite main villain of the Arrowverse. Let me know your list in the comments down below, and what do you think about this video? Let me know in the comments, I already said that, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.